Okay, welcome to this lesson. We're going to talk about the ITIL service value system. We're going to describe what it looks like, the elements of it, some components in it, and most importantly, why it's going to be useful. So we're going to talk about the service value system and also look at, briefly and introductorily, we'll see in more detail later, the service value chain at the core of it and how that supports the value streams and the value system that deliver good service value. For service management to work, it needs to work as a system. There's lots of elements, lots of components to service management. That's been true for the 30 years that ITIL has been going on. We've talked about functions beforehand, we talked about process, we talked about life cycle system, we're talking about value nowadays. These are all valid ways to cut the cake. There is sometimes an element of fashion about which one is the current one. But what is absolutely true and has never changed is that the components have to work together. What we do not want to do is to build silos or think we can do a piece of this at a time and then plug another bit onto it. As I talked about before, it's like building the wall. You have to integrate it together. What the ITIL service value system describes is how we have inputs to the system, the elements in that system and the outputs. Like any sensible system has inputs, a machinery that turns it into something else, and outputs that are the consequence of doing it. Very simple concept. Difficult sometimes to do, but the concept of input, machinery, output is what holds it all together. So we want to look at the components, the activities involved, and how we can make that system work together and why it needs to work together. So it's deliberately been built to enable flexibility, to discourage siloed working, to keep us in a flexible kind of approach. And that flexible approach is not just in terms of flexible issues at work, but to reflect the different priorities, the different aspects, the different frameworks, the different backgrounds, the different origins that different people are using. So it's consistent with Agile, DevOps, Lean, traditional project management. It has an overall flexible approach and pretty confident it will be consistent with the next fashionable architecture and framework that emerges for us. This is very much universal. So there's a picture of the ITIL service value system. Seen it before, you're going to see it a lot more as well. It ensures co-creation of value, continual co-creation of value. And remember, continual is used in the sense that it is in ISO 9000 and management standards. Never ending. Doesn't necessarily mean slow and steady, it means never ending. What do you do when you've co-created value with all your stakeholders? You go and co-create some more value with all your stakeholders. And we're going to do that through using management products, management services, and so on. So let's look at the parts, because everything is the sum of its parts. Now the picture here does have nice firm lines between them, and we can see guiding principles on one colour, governance on another colour, service value chain in another funny shaped block. Don't take those walls too seriously. All these things are not silos. They're how all have to work together, and that means the interface is less than precise. So we're going to look at guiding principles, governance, service value chain, and all those kind of things, practices and continual improvement. Starting though with opportunity. Opportunities represent options and possibilities to add value. So it says opportunities and demand. Demand is the need for or the desire for products. So don't worry too much about separating those concepts. Again, there's a generic sameness to them. They're a mechanism by which we can do something. It's a seed upon which we can grow value. Whether that comes from an externally identified opportunity, an internally articulated demand, or more likely a piece of both, one building upon the other. That's the seed we're going to grow from. And it's important to understand that. There is the potential in that opportunity and demand, like there is in a seed, for the entire tree to grow. The end result, let's skip through to the end here, is the value. This is the value or some modified, evolved version of the value that was perceived in opportunity and demand. It's going to be multiple different types of value for multiple people. Remember, we co-create value. It's not some slave creating value for their master. This is people working together, roles working together, organizations working together to generate value for everyone. Not necessarily homogeneous. Some people may feel they get more than others, but there will be co-creation of value by people working together and multiple recipients of that value. So that's the end-to-end point that we're talking about, from the seed to the tree, from the opportunity of demand through to the value. Now, we've got some techniques inside that machinery there to help us make that happen. First, and right at the top, are the guiding principles. We're going to look at those. There are several of them. We're going to look at them in detail in later lessons. But they are crucial. They guide an organisation in all circumstances. They are universal and enduring. Fancy words for mean you can use them all the time. They're always going to be relevant. And as I said, they are relevant in your domestic life, they're in the work environment. They are simple, sensible rules, the kind of simple, sensible rules that people habitually forget. And that's why it's important that we articulate them and document them and give ourselves a routine and a rigour which makes us address them. So those are the drivers, if you like. They're the tools we've got to build things with, the mechanisms for ensuring we're building the right things. Governance is critical to that. It's a controlling mechanism. It's a system by which things are controlled and directed. Every organisation has some degree of governing body, a person or a group of people who are accountable. Now, accountable is the highest level. It means takes the credit or the blame, basically. It doesn't mean they do the work. Governance people are not necessarily doing the work. But that governing body is accountable. If you want an analogy for good governance, think about sport. And there's quite a good comparison analogy here between traditional governance and the best kind of governance, in my opinion. And perhaps I'm showing my sporting backgrounds here. But if you think about football, soccer, if you're viewing this outside of Europe or in North America anyway, like many sports, you have bodies that set the rules, and then you have somebody on the pitch enforcing those rules, a referee with a whistle. In soccer, they do nothing until somebody breaks a rule, and then they blow the whistle and tell you off. That works. That's a traditional method of governance, and I imagine many of us have worked in organisations where that's exactly the mechanism. You can go and read the rules, and then if you break them, somebody will come and tell you. Think of a different sport where it's done slightly differently. Think about rugby union. If you've never watched it, it's worth doing. Because not necessarily for the violence and the footballer's skills, but watch the referee. Whether you're watching in a park on a Sunday morning or an international match, the referee is never quiet. They're forever shouting advice to the players. And that's because they don't want the players to break the rules. They want them to stay within the rules. Just as in an organisation, good governance is about helping people to follow the rules, not getting pleasure out of punishing them when they break it. Now, a rugby referee will blow the whistle and stop the game and penalise people, but before that, they're always shouting about, no, get back, you'll be offside, or it's a maul, stay on your feet, or it's a ruck, don't use your hands. Don't worry if those words don't mean anything to you. But the principle is very valid. Good governance helps you keep legal. And that's what governance should be doing in our value stream organisation, helping us do the right things, not blaming us when we get it wrong. At the core of the service value system are service value chains. And the picture here has got chain in single on it, but there are multiple chains. They represent operating models that outline a whole set of connected activities that you have to perform, that an organisation, remember that definition, an organisation performs in order to drive that machine. We're going from the seed on the left to the value on the right. So we deliver the value realization through that machinery, and the value chain is applicable very, very widely, and we're going to look in some detail at the value chain in the next lesson or two. We need techniques in order to do things. We need sets of resources designed to be built and used and exist in such a way that they deliver an objective. Those resources are going to be done within practices. Those practices are things like incident management and problem management and the service desk, are things we're familiar with. The nuts and bolts, if you like, of an organisation's service management structure. They've been around a long while, they're going to be around a lot further. There are a lot more of them you might understand. We're going to talk about several of them briefly in this course. We're going to talk about some of the more important ones in rather more detail. And that's some of the nuts and bolts that you're going to take away from this course, we hope, where ITIL actually says to you, this is a good way to do it. So practices are real hands-on tools with which we can shape that value. And underneath, we have continual improvement. Continue, again, meaning never ending. A recurring activity. We keep doing it. We're doing it at all levels. We want to improve the tiniest parts of our organisation. We want to improve the biggest. We want to improve everything from articulating that seed and understanding the value through to the best way to take calls on a service desk or to build something. Everyone is involved in continual improvement. Everyone has a responsibility to make continual improvement happen. Continual improvement takes place in every area of the organisation, and it's perfectly legitimate for it to look over the wall at other organisations and make suggestions. Everyone needs to contribute. It applies to the service value system, our products and services, our components, our relationships, our skills, our people, everything. So, very simple rule, no exceptions. So that's the service value system. It's complicated to look at. It's a lot of interfacing factors, but it's central and it's critical. And it's a lot easier in practice than you might think. It is a machine for taking our ideas, our opportunities, our demands, the kernel, the seed, the possibility, and for turning that into the value for everybody that this whole exercise is about. So looked at that way, I think it's fairly simple. You can make it complicated, of course, but the concept is simple. Now, we talked in the middle of that about the value chain. The world, the service management world, is full of value chains, tiny ones, big ones, interfacing ones, interacting ones. The universe is full of them. But unlike the universe, where 90% of the matter is apparently dark matter we can't see, we should be able to see our value chains. So when we're going to look in the next lesson at value chains and understand what they are and why they work and how they work, then I think you'll begin to see value chains in your organisation that you had not noticed there before. So come back for the next lesson and hopefully we'll expose you to some of your value chains.